the natural state of the free market is deflation. Is that true or not? Because if that's true, then it means we've never lived in a global free market. I cannot believe people can't see this. You're building venture returns on top of a venture asset, and you're fixing the world as you're doing it. An open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy, what Bitcoin is the first free market that has ever existed. And that protocol is emerging in layers, and it's going to be a parallel internet. It's going to reprice everything in the world to a free market where all of the abundance from our trade with each other flows to everyone naturally. It's the first non-zero-sum game we've ever seen in the world.
Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kyle. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you making the time. I thought a good place to start the conversation would be to mention something that you have said before, which is that if Bitcoin does not become a widely used medium of exchange, then it will fail. So is this the biggest threat Bitcoin faces? And as Bitcoiners, how can we take action towards this end?
Use it. Spend on it. Because that sounds like a harder statement for most people. I don't think maybe I'm going to start in a different place. There's a whole bunch of Bitcoiners today who are starting to see it as a store of value or a part of a store of value, who 2, 3, 5, 7 years ago couldn't in the wildest dreams see it as a store of value. Right. So the transition of people understanding this takes time. And then as they see it as a store of value, then a lot of those same people can't see it as a medium of exchange. And so this is just a matter of time. People will get there. They'll go deeper and deeper and understand this, and it will become a medium of exchange. I don't think there's a risk to that, even though I pose that risk so that people can see their own actions inside of that. And as simple as this, so a lot of people, when I said it on Robert Breedlove's podcast, I've said it many times. In fact, I had a debate with Safe about this maybe a year ago, who then debated Saylor about it after I debated Safe, and Safe was on the other side of me, then took my side against Saylor, and it's just a confusing topic, right? But if you just go back to first principles and you just say, the natural state of the free market is deflation, and you could attack that. Is that true or not? Because if that's true, and it is certainly true, then it means we've never lived in a global free market. And that means we always have centralized, and gold used to be the best proxy for that. And it always, once it got centralized, got either abused by creating derivatives on top of it, because that system was an inflationary system that had to be at odds with the deflationary one. And so by being at odds, it has to centralize. And at the end of that centralization, gold either gets suppressed through derivative instruments that get printed forever, or taken back by force, or it was 6102 attack. And that's always happened. So when people compare gold and they say Bitcoin doesn't need to look like this because gold's a store of value that never looked like this, they don't actually realize they're making my point. Right? They're making my point because gold, if it actually was a medium of exchange as well, it wouldn't be able to be manipulated like it is. And it wouldn't be able to be centralized. And gold would be $80,000 an ounce instead of where it is today. So it would have resolved this paradox. And what history shows is it's constantly failed to resolve this paradox. So why would we think that this new thing called Bitcoin, this protocol bounded by energy, this open decentralized protocol bounded by energy, if we didn't use it, we used the other thing that was just a proxy on top of this, on a centralizing system, why don't we think our actions would centralize it? Right? I find it almost mind-numbing that people can't see it, because they know they live on an inflationary system. They know that inflationary system. Where does the inflation come from? Only one place: manipulation of money. So if it only comes from manipulation of money, and the free market is the opposite, then if you're contributing to just storing your Bitcoin and only doing that, then you are likely building fragility or centralization into this. You will likely be the person that trusts an ETF with your Bitcoin. And by saying trust an ETF, is what I'm really saying is pay somebody to introduce counterparty risks to you, is what I'm saying. You will likely use Tether or some other instrument as a stable coin. And what is a stable coin? It's a guaranteed loss coin against Bitcoin. Right? That's where it gains its stability from masking the natural state of the free market and can concentrate at creating control. But so many people will make that choice that they're going to get rugged. They're going to get hurt. That when that happens, call it the US coin or whatever centralized structure of coin you wanted to use, forget the US, just the incentives of this. When that comes to try to negotiate with Bitcoin, the nodes say, yes, I'm going to accept this thing where I can't transact openly, or will they rebel against that? That'll cause a chain fork, right? And then I suspect US coin, because of global competition, would at that time look like Bitcoin Cash.
Very interesting. So where I'm coming from into this conversation, and I appreciate just kind of laying a little bit of the macro environment, where we're going here. As a young entrepreneur about 18 months ago, I came to a very similar conclusion that you did, which is that I needed to allocate more of my time and energy into the Bitcoin space. So I think the main line of questioning I have for you today, which we'll kind of keep getting into, is really what can we do? You mentioned just buying and holding Bitcoin is creating more fragility. So where we think that hodl-ing is the way to make this thing resilient, actually going on offense and taking action is really where it's at. So I am doing that, and I'd love to glean some wisdom and hopefully make my time and energy more impactful. I'm going to be, as you know, making a film this summer, so I'll be hopefully applying some of what I've learned from you in the past and today to that film. But I guess the next question I have for you is, if you were early in your career, you were entrepreneurial but inexperienced, and you had a deep understanding of Bitcoin, where would you start?
That's a really good question, and I get asked that often. So what you're doing is contribution, right? Like even right now, if you're buying Bitcoin, if you're even if you're a sailor and buying Bitcoin and not spending it, even if you're doing that, you're part of a competitive and cooperative system that is benefiting all society. The question is, can it stay there? And how much time, and to stay there are a whole bunch of other things need to happen. It needs to be spent. It needs to be created in a circular economy. It needs to be the foundation. That network that's being created is creating that. So every single person adding their voice to the cooperative and competitive nature benefits every other person on the network. So for now, we don't know, let's say US coin through Sailor or Coinbase says, we're taking all of this, right? Or and I suspect that might not even happen, but let's say it happened. Those companies would face a choice to go against the US and vote with a network that's decentralized and secure, or bend the knee. And the question isn't are these people bad or good or anything else? It's what choice will they make if they were forced to bend the knee, and what would each person do if you were forced to bend the knee? The beautiful thing about Bitcoin is why it can't be centralized is the nodes are all protected. They're secure. They're around the globe, and many of them are behind Tor browsers that nobody knows who's running them. So that consensus mechanism keeps this thing decentralized and secure. So first off, I want to start by reinforcing every single person, whether they're buying this, teaching it, doing something, is actually making this thing better. They're applying their time. Then it's a question of how much time and what could you do. What entrepreneurs do. You're an entrepreneur. What the entrepreneurial process is at least in building something new, is imagining a different state of the world, what it'll look like, and building the value to deliver that people don't know they need yet, but they'll need it once you deliver it. Right. And that's why it's a really creative. So to be able to do well in that process, you have to understand technology curves, what's changing. Like, so today AI is moving so fast, it's making things cheaper, faster, better. You can use this to build a company with one person rather than 100 people today, and because of that, you can provide way more value. So you have to know how fast the technology curves are going. You have to understand, and why that's important is because if you mistime that, if you say you're going to deliver this and you can't for a long time, you might be right. But by the time you're there, your cap table, your investors, they hate you because you're too far in front of it, right? And so this happens often, where a good idea was just at the wrong time. So you have to understand these things. You have to understand the existing system. What pain is it creating? And what is likely to concentrate more? What things are normal out of this, and what things people think are normal? It's normal. Then they're doing this, and it's getting worse and worse in their lives. And you create something that gives them crazy value against what they think is normal today. That allows you to build a 10x, 100x of value to solve the problem that exists by the market structure today. That makes sense?
Definitely. And I think the interesting thing is, you being one of the partners with Ego Death Capital, you guys are investing in the businesses I wrote down. And I do want to ask you specifically about just some of the differences, not just from picking investments, but also just how you guys operate. You guys write on the website, we don't follow the rules, we create our own. We look below the surface, we constantly question. We avoid groupthink and narrow-mindedness, we seek truth. We want a world that is unified, not divided. We want kindness, generosity, honesty, and integrity. We support the collective good. We reject exclusivity and exploitation. We believe in financial security for all and equal access to wealth. We don't subscribe to excessive greed. We trust in abundance. So can you tell me a little bit about how these beliefs and values show up in practice? Does the business model itself of a venture capital firm change? Does the return timeline or the metrics that you use to judge success of the businesses change? Maybe tie that into what you're talking about as far as timing the market. You guys are visionaries looking at the future, and how are you kind of balancing just all of these new changes in the space?
Yeah, and this is the depth of that question on how like we could spend 4-hour podcast and just go there because we're operating, at least I think we're operating on a different framework than most of the world. And our framework of the world says this: an open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy, what Bitcoin is. Those 5 aspects of what Bitcoin is the first free market that has ever existed. And that protocol is emerging in layers, and it's going to be a parallel internet that's going to move everything. It's going to reprice everything in the world to a free market where all of the abundance from our trade with each other flows to everyone naturally. So in other words, to gain more Bitcoin in time, you have to provide value to somebody else on their terms. That's the world that we are building looks like. And the only thing to get there, forget ego death for a minute, the only thing that would change that is if somehow Bitcoin got co-opted, centralized, or insecure. Everything else, it will for sure impose that reality, whether we like it or not. I don't know why we wouldn't like that, right? Because it would mean if you weren't working, then everyone else working would also be benefiting you by that trade, because everything would fall. So the collective, all people competing with each other on a cooperative network, benefits everybody. It's the first non-zero sum game we've ever seen in the world. So we have to start there. Then what would that look like if it was misunderstood? What would it look like if people were thinking in terms of technology rather than protocols? Protocols are winner take all, and they come in layers and they add more functionalities. Technologies are winner take most until the new technology beats the old technology. So if you just use the lens I just said, you could see why everybody gets scammed on crypto and coins and blockchain and all this nonsense, because they're thinking through a lens of technology instead of protocol. And protocols build in layers and extend functionality. So if now you know this and you have a different view of the entire world, and it's super early, what would you do? You would invest in companies and and founders who are building on this protocol in layers, trying to add value to society in a staggering way. And if they were right, they would be building their balance sheets in Bitcoin, because the profits would turn into Bitcoin profits, and then their treasury would be Bitcoin, and you'd be advancing the trade of Bitcoin all around the world, and you'd be collecting Bitcoin just like you'd collect previously. You'd collect US dollars on your balance sheet. You'd be collecting Bitcoin on your balance sheet by providing value, and that Bitcoin you were collecting was repricing everything else, and you were growing. So what do we see? By the way, it looks very different than most venture capital, because most venture capital, and I'm not saying venture capital 30, 50 years ago. I'm saying venture capital today. 30, 50 years ago, the venture capital was alongside entrepreneurs building big bets where they knew if they were wrong, they were going to go to zero. And so they worked carefully with entrepreneurs and tried to help them create massive success. And then venture capital, just because money's co-opted, obviously venture capital is co-opted. And then venture capital turns into this thing to how to sell shit coins, right? And exit liquidity for everybody else, and no value to society. And there's a whole bunch of people in there saying that they want to add value to society. I'm not saying blaming people, because they actually, some of them believe this. Well, their returns needed inside the other world are completely incented the wrong way. So, and then that venture capital model would obviously have opposing views from an entrepreneur wanting to build long-term value. So why would most entrepreneurs look at venture capital with disdain? Because much venture capital today looks like I say one thing to get your business, and then I do another. And so being an entrepreneur all my life, I lived with that. I lived with what that looked like, and what the impact it made on your decisions. And because you're going to your board meeting and you can't talk about long-term value, it's really what are you doing right now. And so I wanted to, if I was going to be part of a firm, I wanted a firm that would be venture capital that I would take, that it would look like. So what does that look like? It looks like what you just read. It looks like, and we hold ourselves to a really high standard on this. Each of our partners is different, right? We have different strengths, different weaknesses, not better, not worse, just different. And we're honest with, and sometimes you learn something through a crazy debate that changes your view on that. Some of the partners have better operational experience, some have better visionary, some have, and that thing to try to provide value to our portfolio companies hopefully resolves in companies doing really well, and those companies and those founders saying we made a positive impact on them.
Beautiful. And I really appreciate how you've been on both sides of it, right? You didn't just get into venture capital. You had, a long history as an entrepreneur, so you can speak the language, but also understand the pain points. I can 100% agree with just once you take the venture capital money, you have different incentives. To your point, I joined
your best day. Your best day is the day you take your money, and then the worst days follow.
And isn't it funny how as society we celebrate getting the money as if it is success, when actually it is the chain that now is going to potentially limit the success.
Totally.
Super interesting.
So Kyle, if you had asked me 10 years ago, would I ever run a venture firm or would I be part of it? I would have said no chance. Like, because I had the same view of venture capital as most entrepreneurs. So setting this up, it had to look different for me to be involved. And so we have a high bar on that. I'm not saying we do everything right all the time. We make mistakes too, but that high bar is generally, like, if I look at the companies in the old game, you would go pre-seed, seed, A, B, C, D, E. A lot of times it would go public, essentially dumping liquidity onto public buyers, and it still would be unprofitable. What we're seeing in this is sometimes from seed to profitability and huge growth rates and profitable the whole time. So adding Bitcoin to the balance sheets each month at crazy phenomenal growth rates. I'm thinking, I cannot believe people can't see this. You're building venture returns on top of a venture asset. And you're fixing the world as you're doing it. All of these problems that exist over here for people, you're providing the off ramps so that they can create better lives, and the fund is doing extraordinary from that very thing, from providing value.
And the way that you guys have described it is you're building the infrastructure, the highways for the future Bitcoin ecosystem, right? And I observe different businesses creating right now. The biggest businesses in and around Bitcoin are the ones that are the bridges between the traditional system and the Bitcoin system, the Coinbases, the exchanges. In the future, it sounds like some of those businesses will still exist probably, but there will be an entire new set of rules in which the next generation of businesses needs to be operating in. As someone who is excited to just contribute to this, this future, what are some of the skill sets that I should be thinking about building, or the experiences or just ways that I can improve in order to serve that future versus the inflationary one?
So one thing specifically, and there's a really mix and match here. There's a lot of Bitcoiners today, or a lot of crypto today, that now is getting religion on Bitcoin, but they haven't realized that it's a structural change that is the free market. And so what they're really doing, and when you say these bridges and Coinbase, if Coinbase didn't sell any coin, if they just bought Bitcoin, they would own a bit more Bitcoin than MicroStrategy today, if they didn't have any other business. So in other words, by deceiving a whole bunch of people, they call it cheating, they lost. They're still winning versus a fiat system, but they lost what the opportunity was if they were just an honest broker. And why is that? Is because our minds see our existing system, and it wants to fractionalize every asset. Fractionalize it, lend it out a million times, have real estate made up of millions of buyers, so you can fractionalize it and push up prices more and extract more from that. Where the free market is the opposite. The free market is deflationary. Prices come down, you provide value and so you're seeing, I would say, the most of Bitcoin today, specifically most of crypto, which is way bigger than Bitcoin today, relates to all the noise in it and the money in it, is still we live in an inflationary system, let's fractionalize assets. That makes sense. Absolutely. And then what you're seeing building along the exact parallel world, it's exactly the opposite world, is deep tech and integration that you don't need to fractionalize. You don't need to buy a piece of a house to live your life. You can get, well, just by holding Bitcoin and spending and accepting Bitcoin natively in the new system. So we're investing in the latter. We're investing in the, but you see tons of people over here, and from that would be bound to be confusing for most people on the planet, because they would be going from one system, their cognitive dissonance from a system they've always lived in that always seemed real, to a new system that's being imposed on them. And so to help you in that, where would be the nuggets of value that if most people thought this and that's where they were building to, and you thought they were wrong, what would you build to solve their problems? What companies, whether you want, and if you didn't want to build one yourself, what companies touch you here that solve a problem and go join one? And if before that, do what you start a podcast and talk to people that are building these and meet other people that are in this ecosystem. And as you meet more and more people, your brain turns on to all sorts of different opportunities. And the deeper you are in that, and the more you understand the tech, and the more you understand the different layers of the protocol, the more you see different opportunities within that to provide value to someone else. And the more you provide value to someone else, the same as your podcast. If you provide a ton of value to your audience, your podcast will explode.
If you're building on Bitcoin or just trying to stay focused in a noisy world, you need energy, not another crash from coffee or sugary drinks. That's why in 2023, I founded EARTHY. EARTHY is a natural energy beverage. It tastes like hot chocolate, comes in a powder. You can do 1 scoop, 2 scoops before the gym, before you work. This product is made to give you long-lasting, clean, sustained energy. So if you're ready to level up your energy, cognition, your focus, you got to try some EARTHY energy. The link is down below. Now let's get back to the show.
The way I see it is moving towards Bitcoin has, to your point, it has opened my mind to all the opportunities that are out there. It's a shift from the scarcity mindset just to a world of abundance, and that mindset shift alone is it's incredibly encouraging, because as a young entrepreneur, you're if you want to start something, you have a low chance of success to begin with, so you must believe in it very, very deeply. I was blessed enough to have a skill set that was valued in the marketplace. So when I wanted to move towards Bitcoin, I said, what can I do? I can hold a camera. So I've been flying around the world filming with different Bitcoin content creators and some companies, some brands. And one of the guys that I was lucky enough to stumble across was in Bulgaria, Ivan Makedonsky, who made this podcast happen. And he really left an impact on me. He was my third guest on the podcast. He told me a little bit about his life story, and now we're making this movie together. I'm curious, what about Ivan drew you in, and what can we learn from Ivan's approach to maybe permissionless work and just the approach of taking action?
Well, so you probably know that story. So Ivan came to a Bitcoin event that I went to in Bulgaria, and he wore a shirt. I can't specifically remember the shirt, but he wanted a picture taken, and he talked, and then we got to know each other. And then he stayed in touch, and I introduced him to Breeze when Breeze was looking for somebody, and this is just somebody through their own proof of work was curious, interesting. Where could I do? What could I do? He started doing work for Bitcoin before any company hired him in Bitcoin. He cared about this deeply. His own story and how he cared deeply is his mom was killed by his stepdad to steal their money, and if they had Bitcoin in self-custody, that wouldn't have happened. And so it's a horrific story to get there, but he's a hardcore Bitcoiner, and he said something special when we met, just how much I impact his life. I didn't even know him, right? So they would just through podcasts, and he came to Sofia in Bulgaria to see me, and then that impact, and now he's touching a whole bunch of other people like he just touched you. That's the way the world should work. You provide value to somebody, they remember that, and it plays on. They provide value to somebody else. That's and so you see this all over in Bitcoin. You see it everywhere in Bitcoin, and I can't help but think how connected we all are through this. The ideas that we form and the different trials that we fail, we try something, then we try again, we get up, and if we create value for other people, our business is successful or we're successful, and it keeps on playing on, those people pass that on. So that's my story specifically with Ivan. But but I think that story rings true with so many different Bitcoiners. That's the way this looks in this industry, because it's a cooperative, competitive game. So you
It's
win.
great to
You win by helping others.
It's great to hear that coming from you, because that has been my experience. I've always subscribed to just put yourself out there, do work for free, don't worry about getting paid, get the experience, and then learn the value. Right, for me is, I get to be in the room with all these Bitcoiners. I pointed at when we were in Medellin, Colombia, I was like, these are the revolutionaries right here, and I'm in the room with these guys. Like, what an incredible blessing. So
just so you know, and people say that about me, but that's how I feel about everybody in this space. Like, literally, that's a feeling I get. And you can't thank everybody for your own piece, because it would just take up all. But my mind goes to all of these other people that were nuggets of my knowledge along the way, or this piece, or this, and it's that it's so real in this space. It's so powerful, and you don't see it elsewhere.
it's very true. I started my career in documentary filmmaking, was the direction I wanted to move. And I had a couple bad experiences, let's just say that, that steered me away from filmmaking, and towards entrepreneurship, pursuing making money. Bitcoin actually gave me the tug back towards creativity. So
Awesome.
I want to talk a little bit about just cultural projects, call them cultural projects, things that are projects in and around Bitcoin that aren't necessarily to drive returns or something like that. Where do you see cultural practices, storytelling, creating narratives, education? Where do you see that lacking in the Bitcoin space?
I don't know if it's lacking so much as it's because it's decentralized network. It's not a centralized story, and so they're more groundswells, and so how do you create a story that really resonates, whether it's a documentary or other? So think about most stories. You'll know this really well. Many of the audience might not, but if you think about the hero's journey. Why it is the hero's journey why is that in every story that we cry for, we root for the hero, every single movie is and many documentaries that again touch us the most. I think it's evolutionary. Before we written language and the works, is that would be that high fidelity tugging into your emotions would be the way to communicate importance of a story, and we were part of that story, so you had to drive that emotional story. Same thing is true here. Is the more the more the journey looks like that person fell down and overcame those odds or whatever, we want to root for that person. We don't want to root for the person that fell down and blames the world or is an egomaniac. We don't want to root for that person. So I think just how we build community, how we've always built community, because community and love and belonging is so important to our survival, is the same reason that story still touches us the way it touches us today. So now how would you make that? You would amplify those things that I think too many people are too afraid to share, right? Because they're too real. They're too on the way. But all of our lives look like that. There's no one I've met that hasn't been through their own journey, failures, like deep failures or something that everything fell apart. I've never met anybody that their own story doesn't look like that.
Would you at Ego Death Capital, do you guys ever get people reaching out asking, hey, would you support this project or this initiative? Maybe it's not a profitable business. Is that something that you guys, I'm not asking to donate to our
So we don't at the capital because in a fund, that's not something you could do in a fund. Maybe you could do it as a tiny little piece of it at some point as a marketing budget, but it's not something you could do as a fund. So limited partners invest in, I would say, primarily two reasons. but we have to think it is about as one. If it was all my own capital, could do anything you want. But if it's I'm raising money from LPs who are investing in me to produce a return, Bitcoin's IRR is 45%. And I wouldn't invest in anything that I didn't think I could beat 45% return, right? Because otherwise I would just tell them to hold Bitcoin. So that'd be different if it was me saying it was just my money, I could do everything else. But if you're building a fund, you have to treat your investors' money as what is the risk-free return rate? It's 45% as far as I can tell. What are we going to do to make sure that we return more than that? And so that would automatically discount things like you just talked about. But I see a resurgent of the things you're talking about in time, because the Bitcoin holders today will have so much wealth in Bitcoin, and they won't be able to spend it. They will want to drive into the arts. They will want to drive into helping accelerate different knowledge pieces, especially like really great arts. They will want to. So I suspect that that's just a matter of timing, that a bunch of that unlock happens. Actually, you see that unlock in things today, in some of the donations in the Bitcoin space. Maybe not in film as much, but in some of the other areas, you certainly see it.
I'd like to get a little bit on your impressions of Bulgaria. I know you did a week-long tour. Is that true? You spent a full week there, and so
Yep.
You really got your hands dirty. General impressions, what was it like to be there, and also what was it like to be involved in the Bitcoin community there?
It was awesome. Like it was. Have you been?
I have last year, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was awesome. Now, it's funny. Some of the structure and everything else. It looks like, in some of the places it looks like old communism. Meeting New World and different things, and then beyond that, way further back, some of the ruins and some of the different areas. We didn't read about them in the history books. We were visiting tombs that were before the pyramids, and seeing gold and bones and different things that were perfectly preserved before the pyramids. And I don't remember anything in my history book talking about Bulgaria. So traveling around that country, it was awesome. It was not on my list of top places to go, and it should have been on my list of top places to go.
It's a special place for sure.
Yeah.
And I love the people there too. Just they're very direct, they're very serious, and I also really enjoy working with them. Ivan has brought on another member of the team, and we all are very aligned on, hey, let's get stuff done. Let's have fun while we're doing it. So yeah, it's cool to hear that.
And the Bitcoin community there is real, right? It's growing pretty quick.
Yeah, it's amazing, the grassroots initiatives there. And by the way, we just got a SAT walk. What is it? Endo, I forget his name. He does the Bitcoin walks on Saturday all over the world.
Yeah.
We just got one here in Seattle.
Awesome.
This Saturday is the first one.
Did you meet Plamen when you were there?
I did, yes.
You went to his bar?
Yes, I did, but I think they're actually closing it down and finding a new location. They were making too much noise, partying too hard over there. But I did.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, Plamen, and then you've got George Monolov, who's the Bitcoin director at the football club. There's all these cool initiatives, and my job as a storyteller is to bring them together. And the reason why I ask you, what's lacking, or how to tell this story, and I really, really loved what you said about this is a decentralized story. So maybe in the same way that you guys approach investing in businesses in Bitcoin, maybe I should take a step back and think about how do we make this film, given the fact that we are a decentralized team. So we've talked a little bit about, showing the behind the scenes and how we're operating. We have a Geyser page, but definitely you gave me some stuff to chew on there.
Awesome.
So I've got some fun questions for you, if that's all right.
Yeah, it's all right.
All right. Would you ever run for president, prime minister of Canada?
Not a chance.
Not a chance.
No way.
And you're in Vancouver, correct?
I'm in Vancouver, and we just had our election, and it's painful to watch. It just shows how early we are in people's understanding of this.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you had a free market person against a central banker, and the central banker, even though the last 10 years in Canada have been a trend towards authoritarianism, you saw the truckers thing, a trend towards removal of individual rights and freedoms with free speech, a trend towards higher inflation rates, essentially more theft, and living standards going down for a vast majority of the population. The country just voted for more of that.
Yeah, I've seen the hubbub on Twitter today.
Yeah, yeah. So
That's
it's
hard to
and again, if you're in Bitcoin, you're somewhat removed from that. But that means the problem is in your jurisdiction. There is some parts of, do you move? What does that look like? You don't want to. I don't think any of us, any Bitcoiner, wants to live in a place where you have to build walls so high to keep people out because your society is collapsing around you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because, as Bitcoiners, we're on the life raft. But if our family, our friends, and our community are not on it with us, then what good is it really to have all the Bitcoin in the world if you can't go down the street in a safe way?
Totally.
So, yeah,
Totally.
I appreciate that answer. And we'll not be looking to see you in the politics realm anytime soon. Do you remember your first Lightning transaction? Or any other memorable Bitcoin experience?
I don't really, but I use it every day. But I don't remember my first one. I do know that the first ones failed more often than they do now, a lot more, and so at least on the first try, and that's completely changed. But I don't really remember the first one.
When I had my first on-chain transaction, it was almost like a spiritual moment. I'll never forget it. I wrote in my journal the whole thing. I cried actually because I just couldn't believe it. And I had also, I didn't have anybody to hold my hand to learn the stuff. So it was like this empowering journey. I think maybe something that I would share with someone who's interested in Bitcoin is like, it's so empowering and it fills you up in a different way when you have to learn something and then you see it work. And nobody really helped you get there, so figured I would share that.
That's awesome.
What's your favorite song or band?
Oh my God, really diverse music background. Lots of country. Stereophonics, "Have a Nice Day." Love that song. Probably just it was I went to a concert early and with my brothers, and it was just one of those moments. But broad music background.
I know you play the guitar as well. Will you ever do Satoshi Nakamoto?
I don't know. There's too much talent in this Bitcoin ecosystem. Yeah, so I'm better just behind the scenes, campfire guitar. That's the yeah.
I love it. And lastly, what's your favorite documentary film?
Oh, again, I'm going to come blank here. That's like, and sorry to do this, Kyle, but it's like when people ask me my favorite book or favorite this. The moment they ask, everything goes blank for me. I can't think of the documentary film. Really liked God Bless Bitcoin, though. I thought they did a good job in that one.
And you were in it, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where God Bless Bitcoin as well as Dirty Coin are two of the really fantastic documentaries that we are looking to take a page from. Well, that's all I've got for you, Jeff. And I just wanted to say, as we end here, one of my favorite quotes is, "Remember when you wanted what you have right now." I really resonate with your ability to live in the moment and appreciate everything that's happening and seem to still be able to move forward and operate knowing that the stakes are so high of what we're going through, what we're living through right now. And Jeff, it's just great to be on the team with you. Thank you for making time for this, and look forward to seeing you in person.
Right back at you, and look forward to seeing you in person again soon.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Have a fantastic day.
Yeah, you too.